falls to me to welcome everybody here to the regular meeting of council for Monday, February 8th at 7 o'clock. Council, first we need a resolution to hold the meeting without the public in attendance. That wording is in your agenda package. Moved by Councillor Murray. Is there a seconder on the motion?
Second.
Councillor Back. Call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thanks for your support, Asad. Appreciate that. Our next up, we have our agenda. Council, it's been circulated. Are there any errors or omissions from the agenda? Hearing none. Moved by Councillor Murray, second by Councillor Hanson. Call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Okay, Council, we have a period of up to 30 minutes reserved at the front end of our meeting for public input. I do have 5 speakers signed up to speak this evening, and I'm going to go to agenda item speakers first. And speaking to item 8.3, I have Hazen Colbert, and then followed by Peter Teven. Mr. Colbert, can you hear me?
Mike, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're a little bit quiet.
Yeah, I have a workaround here that prevents Mr. Gordon from shutting off my mic, but that might actually reduce the amount of noise. Can you hear me now? Is it okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. It's just a little soft, Hazen, but I can definitely make up.
I'm just gonna do something.
Mayor Little, with that introduction, I don't believe this person should be heard.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Mr. Colbert is properly signed up to speak to address the council this evening. Mr. Colbert, you have up to 3 minutes to address council. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Little. Mayor Little and council, as well as staff. I have just 2 quick things to comment on. The first one is there are some budget deliberations that you will be involved with this week and going forward. And I sent some information to Councillor Hanson. And it is my hope that Councillor Hanson will act in a responsible manner and motion that for next year, we have a 20% reduction in the property taxes, and that going back to the previous year, we have a 20% rebate. This position would be consistent with his views on ICBC rates. I'll now move on to the second subject. Second subject is the project which is known as either 1577 Lloyd Avenue or 1600, 16th Street. You've received 2 different communications from me on that matter, and I think that this is an interesting matter which should proceed once the guidance of the community and other parties has been reviewed. So I do support it going to public hearing, and I do support guidance on this project. This is a unique project for the District of North Vancouver, and there are a lot of stumbling blocks that will require all of us to get together and come together. As my good friend Justin Trudeau says, we're going to have to be Team Canada on this. I'm done now speaking, and I will yield my time to any person that wishes to state that we should not have a 20% reduction in property taxes next year.
Thank you, Mr. Colbert. Next up, I have Peter Teven.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. You have 3 minutes to address council.
Thank you. We're a little bit out of order. I was told I was speaker number 5, so I'm a little topsy-turvy, but that's okay. I've never been found to be wanting for words.
I had you as speaking to an agenda item, so I go to those ones first. Go ahead.
Well, not one specifically. Thank you. Peter Tevan, 1900 Block, Indian River Crescent. Your worship and council, I just want to touch base on a few issues among the items in tonight's agenda. The first is the solid waste bylaw. I just want to give you a little bit of feedback as a citizen. When I read this bylaw, here's what it sounds like to me. Here's what you need to do, citizen, and you need to do this, that, and the other thing, and you need to do that too. And if you don't do this, we're going to get you, and we're going to hurt your feelings if you do that. And when it comes to what the district needs to do, all it says is it's all subject to the whim and discretion of the general manager of engineering. It really doesn't seem like much equity in this bylaw. It seems like it's all on me. And I do want to point out There's in there charges for damaging the carts. Anytime my carts have been damaged, it's been from the district's workers, not me. There's fines there if I spill. Anytime there's been spills, it's from workers, more specifically the recycling ones, going too fast and spilling in the street. Not a single time I don't have to pick up after them. But specifically, I really want to draw your attention to the fines for the set out times, because, you know, I've been at all the meetings. We've talked about this 1,000 times about the intention of this council is that citizens would be fined for not having, for putting it out too early. And if they put it out too late, it would just be, you missed your pickup, so sorry. However, that's not what the sticker said. And the reason the sticker didn't say it is because it's not what the bylaw reads. What the bylaw reads is fines for setting it out outside the permitted times, not just before, but after as well. And after all this talk, I'm just absolutely flabbergasted that we can't go back and correct that, because in other departments other than engineering, when we go and say, okay, well, the bylaw doesn't really seem to apply in this situation, what we always get told is staff have zero discretion to interpret bylaws. We must implement it as to its letter. And I can tell you the way this always goes for us citizens. Whichever way we pay more, that's the way it's going to go for us. It's, you know, I don't think you can have it both ways. Staff either can interpret bylaws or they can't. And whenever we get charged more, they tell us they can't. And whenever it's time for us to save money, sorry, no, we have to follow the letter. So that's what I want to say, that is, surely can we not fix that so that it follows the will of this council? The last thing I want to point on is the financial plan. I can't give you input because I have no financial plan. It's to be put on apparently the table somewhere where I can't get to it. I remind council of, quite frankly, from my point of view as a member of the public, what a travesty it was to try to give input last year. And I'll remind council how specifically we were promised openness and transparency on the financial plan, specifically the reserve funds bylaw, which you know is my pet peeve. I'm looking for that this year. I can't give you any further input because I have zero materials. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Teven. And again, council hasn't actually received the budget package. This is the introduction, and the tradition has been that on introduction night, it's just given out, and then there's plenty of opportunity down the road to hear it. So even council hasn't been given an opportunity to consider the matter yet. It's at an early stage. Okay, my next speaker up is, I'm going to say Mari Kitawaki. Followed by Ehsan Portarab.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak, Mayor and Council. My name is Mari Kitawaki.
Is that Elmer behind you there?
Yeah, I'm with Elmer right here. I hope you like it.
Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address council.
Okay, thank you. I'm a passionate crossing guard at Canyon Heights Elementary, where all 4 of my kids go to school. And I'm also a proud new board member of the North Shore Safety Council. And so today I'm here to express our gratitude and on behalf of the North Shore Safety Council and residents of our community. So first of all, thank you so much, Mayor Little, for taking time out of your very busy schedule to come and speak at our meeting in November. We had great attendance that day, and you know, it was so great to see how involved and dedicated you are. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, and thank you, Council, for funding our organization. We couldn't do what we do without your support. And we're also so thrilled to hear that you're hiring a full-time TDM coordinator, which to me sounds like infinite possibilities, and we are so excited about it. So thank you for making that happen. And last but not least, we'd like to thank your amazing staff, Banafshe, and especially Ingrid, who's been with the North Shore Safety Council for a long time, for attending our meetings and really hearing and addressing road safety issues voiced by our residents too. And because it means so much to be heard and to see action being taken in response. So we couldn't be more grateful for their contribution. And I know no place is perfect, but I have 4 young kids of my own, and we've lived in many places over the years. And I have to say that the District of North Van has been by far the best, safest, most family-friendly place we've ever lived in, where we as parents feel safe letting our kids walk to and from school every single day on their own even. And I think a lot of that is due to the fact that everybody involved, the mayor, council, staff, organizations, the RCMP, schools, residents, all genuinely care. And I think that's priceless and so special and unique to this area. So again, thank you very much for all that you do. And we look forward to continuing to do our part with your support and keep improving the active safety of this beautiful place. So that's it from me and Elmer for now. Thanks.
Thank you so much, and really want to express our appreciation for volunteering to help keep our kids safe. We do appreciate it.
Thank
Next speaker I have is SN Porterab, followed by Alex Schwartz.
Hello, everyone, and
Hi.
good evening. Thank you for letting me speak in this meeting. I actually wanted, first of all, thank you for all that you are doing in renovating the Lim Valley area. I live in a Library Lane, and that's actually they are being like creating a really great neighborhood. It's really beautiful, but unfortunately, something is happening, and there are actually so much noise in this area. And all of that actually is related to a loading bay owned by Save-On Foods. I actually sent an email several months ago, and I shared a folder, a Google Drive actually folder, that includes so many videos of the noises that are happening here in this area, but I haven't heard anything. And I just had a call, I don't remember the exact name, but they told me that, okay, that's totally like by law, they are doing that in allowed hours and we can't do anything about that. But unfortunately, to be honest, it's something like that we are living in an industrial area, not in a residential area. They start at sometimes 6:30 in the morning, and they always have like this loading bay open like till 10 p.m. for example. And if I have still time, I can share with you some of the videos, the recent videos that I actually have taken.
We can make sure that your link is shared with council if you'd like. Just if you send the email link to, or the Google link to input@dnv.org, we'll make sure that it's shared with council.
Yeah, sure. That would be great. And the last thing I wanted to say is that I have read the noise bylaws, and I know that morning starts 7 a.m. But I was thinking that maybe that's for like some occasional projects, but not something that is happening basically every day, including weekends. So we actually we are waking up like every day at 6:30 a.m. with noise, and it ruins all of our day actually. And that's really, so I talked to my landlord, and if nothing can address this issue, unfortunately, we have to leave this area. Even that we actually like the area, but we actually moved here because after we started working from home, we used to live in a 1-bedroom, and we wanted actually a home office because my wife and I both are working from home. And that's actually, sometimes we can't even join a meeting because of the noise. And that's really just frustrating.
Thank you for your comments, SN Porterab.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Alex Schwartz. Clerk, just checking in. I don't see Alex's name on the list of people connected to the meeting.
No, Your Worship. He was provided the link, but unfortunately, he's not here at the moment.
Okay. Well, we'll find a way to get Alex's feedback shared with the council. Okay. At this time, council, that's it for public input, and we do have a set of minutes that were circulated from the public hearing for January 26th. Council, are there any errors or omissions from the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Hearing none, that's moved by Councillor Back. Is there a seconder?
Second.
Second by Councillor Murray. Call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries and the minutes are adopted. Moving on to regular reports from council or staff. The first item up is a matter for adoption. This is bylaws 8436 and 8437, solid waste management bylaw 8436, and bylaw notice enforcement bylaw 8437. This matter has been passed from third reading to this meeting, and so now I will call a vote on adoption. All those in favor?
Do you need
Oh,
a mover?
I guess, sorry, I need a mover and a seconder on the
So
second.
moved.
Moved by Councillor
Second.
Murray, seconded by Councillor Back. Call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. With Councillor Forbes, were you voting against? Councillor Forbes, can you hear me?
Yes,
We just want to be
Sorry.
clear, were you voting against that item?
yes, I am.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. So just would like to have the vote reflect with Councillor Forbes opposed.
We have that, Your Worship. Yes.
Thank you very much. Next item up is item 8.2. This is bylaws 8489, 8490, 8491, proposed bylaw amendments to enable e-bike share. I believe we do have a presentation from staff on this. I'm going to go to Mr. Joyce first. I wasn't certain if it was going to go to Mr. Carney next or Ingrid, but Mr. Joyce.
Through your worship, council's aware of this topic and know that staff has been working with CNV and District Westvan since 2019 on an e-bike share on the North Shore. Tonight, council has a series of reports that consider a framework and enabling bylaw amendments. The recommendations outlined in the report will allow the district to work with the city in selecting an operator, allow for a 2-year pilot, and we'll be able to issue a permit to an operator during the pilot. With that, if we proceed with that, we'll anticipate a launch in early summer this year. Tonight we have Ingrid on the call. We also have Zach, who's our North Shore Mobility Options Coordinator, who's been working on this file in detail. And with that, Your Worship, I'll turn it back to you for any questions from council, unless Ingrid or Zach may have any comments to open.
Okay, well, I have some questions. I guess, I was reading through the report and I was a little bit surprised, and I guess this question is probably for Ingrid Weisenbach, but I can understand why we would put in a maximum number of bikes, but in the report embedded in it has a minimum number of 120 bikes. And since it's been so difficult to find partners on the e-bike projects, I'm curious why we've taken the position that we need a minimum of 120, not a more modest figure.
Through your worship, I'm going to let Zach take a shot at answering this question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Thank you, Ingrid. Through your worship, yes, we are setting a minimum threshold. We have been looking at cities across North America and have been trying to mimic best practices in terms of serving the geography and the population adequately. And so we are anticipating, we are hoping for a minimum threshold of 120, which is proportional and in line with where we were with the RFP 2 years ago. And if it doesn't work, the great thing about this framework is the flexibility we will have in terms of adjusting the conditions and the features. So if that's too many or too few, we can adjust that based on the experience we'll get with the operator.
I'd be curious, you know, why aren't we defining the minimum number of drop-off locations? That would seem to me to be what the community would be interested in, is knowing, you know, where these were actually going to be located. And I'm just curious, is that just something we're waiting for for a presentation from a potential partner?
Yes, Your Worship. The application process is very operator driven. And so we are asking the operator or potential operators to provide us with specific information about where they want to be located, how many e-bikes, what their service area, and other information. And our hope is from the information that they provide us with, we can go in, negotiate, and achieve and deliver on our goals and on our objectives that are outlined in the guidelines.
Mr. Stewart, or sorry, Mr. Joyce?
Your Worship, I just to pick up on what Zach said, I haven't come across an issue lately that is changing at such a rapid speed as this one. And that was some of the issues we ran a couple of years back or a year back when we went out with the RFP. So what in this proposal, the framework allows us the flexibility to respond and really lets the industry come to us as where we are today with this topic, and simply because it is quickly changing.
Okay. My last question. Anytime it looks like we're abrogating something to the city of North Vancouver, I love our cousins in the city, but I always want to make sure that it's something I'm comfortable with here. So I want to be clear about what we're actually authorizing the city to engage us in through this process. So in the report, it talks about them being able to engage a partner, but that doesn't mean that it means that they would issue a permit that would be suitable in both the city and the district, but it doesn't in any way give them an opportunity to create a drop-off point without the District of North Vancouver being the decision maker on that. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship. The partnership, if council were to move forward with this tonight and in adopting in a couple of weeks, it would allow the district to work with the city to jointly issue the permit. So it wouldn't just be the city issuing a permit and that allows those e-bikes to come to the district. The district does have to issue the permit jointly. The other aspect is if the district doesn't participate, we could still see e-bikes on our streets, on our trails, but we wouldn't have any designated locations where people could park the bikes at the end of their trip.
To terminate the trip. I mean, they could
exactly
stop and get off, but they wouldn't be terminating or initiating a trip in the district necessarily.
Exactly, Your Worship. It would be like car share, where if you can't terminate your trip, you're going to continue to pay for the service as long as you're using it.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Bond. Oh, sorry, Councillor Murray. Sorry, Councillor Murray's first.
Do you want the motion moved? Are you?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Councillor.
I'll move the recommendation.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Back. Councillor Murray, go ahead.
So just on that, in regards to, so do we have any idea like where we think we would want to put these areas where people could pick up bikes? I mean, obviously the town centers would make a lot of sense because there's people there versus the concern about, I think it was mentioned in the report about the needs for possibly parking, which is a challenge. Wanting to test out an e-bike and having to drive to a place and then park, especially in like I think of Deep Cove automatically. Where would they park? Where would we put this? There's so many challenges in the Cove already. And I hope that we would be really sensitive to areas that are under significant construction and projects, not adding currently for this pilot areas that are already going to be congested. So I would hope, Mr. Joyce, that we would take all of that into consideration when we have these operators or operator come in, and they might really want to put something in an area, but it may not be appropriate right now because of what's going on in that given area.
Just through to Your Worship, correct, Councillor Murray. And unlike a standard procurement process, this framework allows us to work with the chosen operator to do just that. So it gives us the maximum flexibility.
Okay, and so when the recommendations from the operator come to staff, then will you be coming back to council?
At council's discretion, but I'll ask Zach to respond to that on behalf of the municipalities.
Through your worship, as written currently, the bylaws would delegate the permit issuance ability to the municipal engineer.
That would be Mr. Joyce. So then
Yes.
we could come back if we want. Okay.
So your worship, at that point, I'll commit to council. We'll do an informational report when we're
That would be good.
complete.
Yeah, I
With
think during the
locations.
pilot, that's good, just to sort of get a sense of what's happening, and that educates us more on what's going on. And then is West Van included in this one, and the city's managing that too?
Through your worship, at this time, West Van isn't moving forward with adoption of the framework, but they have been and will continue to be engaged with us in terms of monitoring and assessing the evaluate and the applications and so on. So they're present, but they're not considering this in the near term.
They're just wanting us to work out all the bumps, and then when it's good, then they'll hop on board. Okay, and then in regards to the minimum, is that our share?
Your worship, that would be for the whole system upon launch for the prime season of May through September inclusively.
For the city and district?
Yes.
Okay, and then is there a split in that regard? Like is it 30-70 or 40-60? What is it?
Your worship, we're not prescribing anything in terms of the split. We're really expecting the operator to tell us what they want to deliver.
Okay, and just the testing. Okay, all right. Those are my questions so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Muri. Councillor Back, you were the seconder on the motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a few comments. A couple of questions that I had were actually answered in the previous comments, but thank you very much for staff for bringing this forward. I'm really pleased to see this coming forward. Like a lot of the community, I was very supportive of the e-bike share program when the idea came forward in 2019. So I support anything that's going to get us closer to making that a reality. Hopefully this spring or summer. As has been highlighted, this industry is quickly changing. So with regards to drop-off zones and keeping in mind this is a pilot, and we are going to be relying on the operator to make adjustments, and I think that's fair. So I think this is going to be a really positive thing for our community. And as someone who's become an e-bike enthusiast in the last year and commutes on one a few times a week now, I can attest to their transformative nature when it comes to transportation on the North Shore. So I think this is going to be a great thing. I think it will have a positive impact in many ways. So I'm looking forward to it and moving forward.
Great, thank you very much. Next up, I have Councillor Bond.
Thanks, Mayor Little. I've got a few questions. I'll start with a comment. I think that the approach that staff have put together in partnership with our neighboring municipalities is a good one, especially for a rapidly changing industry. We are looking to that industry and the various players in that sector to come to us with a proposal and to be flexible. So I think the framework that's proposed is a good one, especially as we figure out how and when this type of technology and these types of shared electric bikes fit in our community. I think in the previous discussions that we've had on this topic, it was envisioned that this is likely going to be a dockless system. And I'm wondering, is the procurement process open enough? Should a vendor propose a dock system for that to be included as well?
For your worship, yes, we are flexible with the parameters around parking. We have outlined as a bare minimum our desire to see designated areas where dockless bikes can be parked securely and safely. But if an opportunity arises where a proponent has docks in their proposal, we will obviously consider it.
Okay, and then around the parking, obviously our bylaw covers the zones, the parking zones on municipal infrastructure. I assume it would be up to the vendor to negotiate with private landowners, such as a mall or another type of facility that might be a great location. But that would be something that would be up to the vendors individually.
For your worship, yes, they would have to work with the private owners, and those improvements could be subject to additional permitting processes depending on what's on the books in the city and the district.
Okay, and I noticed that there's a section that says all data in the guidelines that should be available to the municipality. Do you have an idea of what types of data are going to be a priority for the municipality to collect and analyze as part of this process?
Through your worship, yes, we're asking for an extensive set of data covering a lot of different topics that we think we'll be interested in over the course of the pilot. And the big chunk of the data is trip data. So where people are leaving from, where are they going, and the data standard that we're using that we've specified in the guidelines should allow us to also see routes. So all of that information will be collected, and we'll be able to use it for both monitoring and assessment and planning.
And that data, is that something that our staff are familiar with analyzing and reporting on, or is that something that would be required for like an external consultant to do the analysis on that?
Through your worship, we should be able to do a good bit of the analysis in-house, and we will also be asking the operator to do some of the analysis for us. So there will be a combination of efforts.
Okay. And I guess one last question, and I know it's up to the operator in this framework to propose the areas of service, but I'm wondering if what thoughts staff have around priority areas of service. The one thought I have is kind of recreational trips versus utilitarian trips. Obviously, the along the Spirit Trail is going to be. It seems like it'd be a popular area, but Metro Vancouver and the ride up to the dam might also be a popular area for people doing recreational trips. So, if staff have any thought about where we would like to see those areas prioritized, I'd like to hear that. And if we have talked to Metro Vancouver about possibly having shared e-bikes heading up the Greenway Trail up to the Seymour Dam, and whether they're aware of that or not.
Through your worship, we have started to think about what makes sense in terms of having parking locations in the service area in the district. And I think Councillor Muri highlighted it best earlier in her comments about town centers and the areas where there's supporting infrastructure. In terms of other locations, there shouldn't be anything preventing, except for our own concerns, riders from going to those locations in Metro Vancouver parks. And we can work with Metro Vancouver to consider designated locations for folks to end their trips, so they don't have to stay up there and pay for the bike. But there are also areas where the e-bikes don't make sense on some of our trails and some of our alpine areas. And so those are places where we wouldn't consider, for example, the e-bikes for use.
Okay, thanks. Obviously, you guys have put a lot of thought into this, and I'm glad to see this moving forward again for a second round.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Councillor Curran.
Thank you. Well, colleagues have mentioned a lot of the important points. I did just want to ask, I remember the reason, but just to reiterate, what were some of the challenges that we encountered in getting this launched the first time, and maybe what's changed to get us over the finish line? Thanks.
For your worship, the RFP, we received bids, but we had some legal concerns with pursuing the bids under that framework. And so we decided to end the RFP without an award. I believe specifics on those legal concerns were shared confidentially with council at the time, and we can follow up to reiterate those after this meeting. But what we've done since is really make this process more flexible, make it so that we can respond to those kinds of challenges if they arise, and hopefully avoid them, and negotiate with the operator more directly to get to mutually agreed upon terms.
Thank you. And then, yeah, I think that projects like this, this is a pilot project, are really critical to getting people who might not be able to buy a bike or not be interested in buying a bike to get out and experience it. And then I think it also will hopefully build support for completing a lot of our cycling infrastructure, because it does open cycling to such a wider audience. And I think that's exciting. And so I'm really pleased to see it moving forward. And I did just have a question. I know the province is always trying to talk about funding for active transportation, if there are any opportunities for us to, subsidize riding to make it accessible for even more people through grants or something. I just wanted to lend my support to that initiative, because I think a lot of the folks that could potentially benefit from this, I'm not sure what the costs are. I guess that remains to be seen based on what comes back from the RFPs. But if there's a lot of paperwork, if you need a credit card, like, it's going to limit young folks from being able to do it. So I just think thinking about how do we make this as broadly accessible as we can is really important. So hopefully the vendors will have worked on that, but we can work on that as well from our end. So thanks. High five to Zachary and Ingrid. Yay.
Thank you. Mr. Joyce?
I was just going to count, Your Worship. It'll certainly bolster our case for any of the infrastructure programs if we're able to demonstrate and point to a successful e-bike share program for infrastructure that we're looking to constructing or currently that is designed.
Thank you. Next up, I have Councillor Hanson for first time.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Obviously, I speak very much in support of anything we can do to introduce e-bikes to the North Shore. And I echo the comment about the potential for to make a transformative difference to our transportation network. No doubt about it, e-bikes are likely to be part of the future of transportation on the North Shore. My question was more of a technical one in terms of the collaboration between the city and the district. I know certain fees are being collected. I assume those fees are being collected by the city of North Vancouver. I just wonder if there could be some clarification as to how those fees will be divided between the city and the district and on what basis.
Zachary?
Through Your Worship, thank you for the question. So there are fees that are paid to the city, and there are some fees that are paid directly to the participating municipalities. So the city will receive an application fee to cover the administrative process and a permit fee based on the fleet size. That permit fee is intended to be shared. In this first year, we're still learning on what the costs are to each of the municipalities, so I can't answer yet what the exact share the district will receive, but the intent is that district will receive some share of that permit fee. And then the third cost associated to this is the security for performance. And so that's sort of a deposit paid to each municipality, and that's to help cover some of our costs if we have to go out and act and respond to issues. So an example would be an e-bike being left in a creek and our ops staff have to go retrieve it. This security would allow us to cover those costs and it wouldn't come out of our regular budget.
Thank you. Councillor Hanson, any further comment? Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Forbes, the first time.
Thank you, Your Worship. First, thank you, staff, for doing all this work. I know we tried to get this going a couple of years ago and it was difficult, so thank you for this report. Lots of work. I'm just wondering, I noticed in the definition, I'm just trying to clarify for myself and anyone else who's listening, in the definition of an e-bike, it says 2 or 3 wheel. Is that correct?
Through Your Worship. Oh, sorry.
Well, I was going to direct it to you, Zachary.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, it is correct. The provincial definition for a cycle, a regular bike, is 2 or 3 wheels, and that also applies to motor-assisted cycles or e-bikes. So we've just carried it over.
Thank you. That leads me into my next question then, again, for myself and clarification and for anyone else listening. I'm a bit concerned about 3-wheel bikes, and if I've understood you correctly, not on roadways. I think the e-bike system for people who either don't want or can't afford a car and can't afford to buy an e-bike, I think this kind of a program's excellent for those kind of people and for people who want to try them and get around that way. I do have a bit of a concern about, you mentioned that these e-bikes are going to be allowed on trails. Is that correct? Like on our mountain trails?
Through Your Worship, from what we understand, talking internally, there are some types of trails that aren't appropriate for e-bike use for a few reasons. And so we're looking to focus their use on paved trails, and the unpaved ones, we will have the ability to limit or restrict access to them. So the e-bikes wouldn't work on some of our alpine and mountain trails.
But you're saying wouldn't work on some of them. Does that mean that you would be open to them being used on some of the trails? The reason why I'm mentioning this is I just think if you get a 3-wheel bicycle or even a 2-wheel, I mean, we already have some conflict when we have our multi-use trails. And I just think if you add a 3-wheel bike into those trails, we're going to have more possible conflict because they're going to be larger bikes taking up more space. And if you have a multi-use path, everybody can't use it at the same time. So I have a concern about that. And that's that I would prefer that for this pilot anyway, that they stay on paved infrastructure and not in the trails until we at least get some statistics and find out some more information about it before moving forward to allow them into the trails. That would be my recommendation. Thank you again for the report.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes. Mr. Stewart, followed by Mr. Joyce.
Your Worship, and Mr. Joyce will probably repeat what I'm just about to say. There is an issue of e-bikes in the trail and in North Vancouver. And there is a differentiation between what is changing in terms of technology, in terms of assisted e-bikes versus fully powered e-bikes, and we'll be coming forward with council. We have tried to work with Metro and the province because we share the North Shore, but at some point, I think in this spring, we're going to have to take a leadership position to say what we want to support. And so we'll be bringing that forward, and we're certainly cognizant of Councillor Forbes' concerns about rampant e-bikes in the Alpine area.
Anything to add, Mr. Joyce?
No, just I was hoping the province to take an early lead in this because it's an issue throughout the province. But as Mr. Stewart alluded to, I have it on the land managers meeting. If council thinks about our discussion about Seymour Mountain and all the land users with Metro, the province, and the district, it's something that has to be dealt with across the North Shore with the land manager. So we'll be discussing it internally, and we'll have something back to council to look at what assist will allow and what trails will allow assist on.
Okay, thank you very much. Second time speakers, Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Little. I just wanted to add that, Metro Vancouver allows e-bikes on our trails, except where we don't allow any bikes at all, whether they're electric or, human powered. But when I'm thinking, and I'm glad Mr. Joyce brought up our working group with Metro Vancouver and the provincial government and ourselves, including West Vancouver, and looking at our whole trail network and where we need, where we need to come together. In fact, we need to come together everywhere in a more holistic fashion. But, riding up to the demonstration force, for instance, there's one option for people to walk along the road, the sort of elevated trail, if you're coming down the road, or you're in the trail system in the forests. But often you'll get bikes riding down the road or up the road, and then bikes on the elevated trail as well. And I think the speed in which some of these electric bikes have, they often, come out of nowhere. And you've got dogs and people and kids and little kids on bikes. And there is certainly that perspective of conflicts arising. So we're looking at, watching emerging issues at Metro in regards to trail etiquette and appropriate trails that would accommodate e-bikes, and how we'll move forward in regards to the broader makeup of all landowners on the North Shore and throughout the region. But I think it is something that we really need to be careful with, because as soon as we allow this, then there's going to be a real interest with people wanting to get on an e-bike into areas that they haven't accessed before, because they do have that ability to assist them. And I think it could be something that is going to be challenging to manage if we don't kind of deal with it at the beginning. I think there's just some places where you would never want an e-bike to go. Even a bike, like in the first half at the top of Berkeley and Hyannis, you don't go into Mountain Forest on the first trail on a bike. There's stairs and it's all narrow. You may come down that way, but you just certainly don't go up. It might be different. Somebody might want to experiment going up that trail. And I think it's an inappropriate area to go up on a bike. So I hope that we start working on where it's most appropriate for e-bikes to go and where maybe they shouldn't go. And where, we've got some trails where people would never go on because they're dedicated mountain bike trails. You would never go on them. They're signed and to stay away from them. So I'm glad that we're looking at that early. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Curran.
Yeah, just two quick questions. One of the challenges can be range anxiety as an fellow e-biker here. And I just wondered if the charging infrastructure was if staff could just speak a bit to charging infrastructure, if it's just going to be on the vendor, or if that's something that the district also has planned in addition to, I know we're looking at EV charging for vehicles, but are we also looking at charging fast chargers for bikes? I don't know how that works. I don't have a fast charger for my bike, but I'm assuming there is such a thing. So if staff could just talk to maybe a bit of the infrastructure that could be planned with or without this. I don't know if it's tied to this, that would be helpful. And then the second question is just if we worked with Tsleil-Waututh Nation or Squamish Nation to see if there was interest in participating as well.
Zachary.
Through your worship, to answer your second question, because it's the one that's still on my mind, we have communicated with the First Nations. At this time, neither the Squamish or Tsleil-Waututh First Nation are going to participate, but we will continue to engage with them, particularly on the Spirit Trail in the Squamish Nation and managing the rider behavior in that area. So we'll continue to engage with them on that. And can you just remind me what the first question was, please?
Charging infrastructure for, yeah.
Yes, so as a sort of operator oriented process, we're expecting the operator to tell us how they want to handle charging. We anticipate that it'll be battery swaps or device swaps where a vehicle is going to circulate and pick up the e-bikes that aren't suitable for use because of the range. We haven't planned or put aside funding to put in our own charging infrastructure at this time, but it's something that we'll be monitoring throughout the pilot and we'll consider and look at in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a little bit of concern, but I realize this is a pilot program, so I'm sure the bugs will show and we'll be able to work them out. But I have a little bit of concern when we're leaving this up, leaving the percentage sort of between the district and the city left up to the operator. Because I can see someone in the city, and I mean, the city starts the other side of the highway up on the higher part. And I could see someone getting a e-bike in the city and coming all the way into the district, and maybe at some point be, whether allowed or not allowed, they get onto a trail or they get high up and they either run out of energy or a number of other reasons or whatever, and they just don't take the bike back to where it would go. And so I'm concerned that we don't have a definite or at least a little bit more informed value on that. And then I'm concerned about, I can see, just because of the way the city is structured physically and the way we're structured in the district and how much farther we're spread out as well, I can see the possibility that the city would have bikes returned, or the bikes would get returned to a proper place. But I can see bikes having to be maybe picked up, or as just discussed, the charge runs out or something, and so they can't take them anywhere. I can see more of a need for that in the district than I can in the city. And so I'm just concerned on how we share the amount that's out there. And then who's paying for the cost of retrieval if the bike is in the district and not in the city? Those kind of kinks, I'm sure, Zachary, you probably already looked at that, but did I miss that somewhere, how that would be worked out?
Through your worship, I can try to clarify that a little bit for you, Councillor. I would say that because the process is operator driven, we're not being prescriptive about where the parking locations are going to be. So how many and where exactly in the district, it's not yet known. We're waiting for the applications to come in. That being said, in terms of rebalancing and ensuring that those locations in the district do have e-bikes and that they're appropriately serviced, the operator is going to have to think about that and balance that from a business perspective. They won't be able to have 20 e-bikes overflowing in the city and 0 in the district if there's room in the district to accommodate them. So on the rebalancing front, I think we will be able to sort of enforce and make sure that that happens for the district if there are locations.
And what about the costs of having to retrieve?
Yes, so the cost, we are charging each municipality a security for performance in the amount of $10,000. So anytime the district staff have to go out and retrieve an e-bike, the hourly cost, whatever cost to us, will be deducted from that security. And the intent with that is that it's refundable at the end of the pilot. So the operator has an incentive to act first, and we won't have to.
Okay, and I'm assuming that these bikes somehow have some kind of GPS on them or something? Okay.
Yes, so they will be connected through GPS and typically 4G, 5G, depending on where the technology is.
Okay, thank you very much.
The bike will have better download speeds than me. Got it. Sorry, Mr. Stewart, are you waving over there, or? I need your mute. You're muted, sir. Mr. Stewart, you're muted.
I just want to remind council, this is the second attempt to do bikes on the North Shore. And the market at the end of the day will determine what's going to work or not work. But we will, this, as a municipality, this is a pilot. We're going to take a good look at it, experience it, and determine what works. And so I just would like council to consider this in the concept of a pilot to see if this works and how it actually shakes out. We don't know that. We don't even know if we're going to get a candidate that's going to bid on it, because we didn't the last time. So I just would like council to consider the fact that we're just trying to do something new and something different. And there's going to be a lot of uncertainties, but I will tell you that you can trust us as staff to minimize the risk to the municipality. And what we're going to do is just test the market, test the opportunities. And it'll be interesting to see what experience we have. If we have data that comes as a result of our experience over 2 years, it'll help us understand what we need to do going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. For my just last comment on this, it would seem to me that the way to measure the success of a pilot is to sort of set out some benchmarks early on, that perhaps now, perhaps at the time that the proposal comes forward. But I see an awful lot of bikes sitting in the receptacles in the city of Vancouver on beautiful sunny days. And I know that that's not a measure of it. Maybe somebody used the bike to get to that spot just 5 minutes before I saw it. But I think that it would be wise to at least be able to produce an in-service hours per bike kind of statistic and say what our projected expected kind of usage levels are going to be at the time of the start of the pilot, and then use that to assess utilization at the end. The reason why I say that is I think that in part the project in the city of Vancouver has been a vehicle to do public outdoor advertising in spaces that the city of Vancouver would not normally allow public outdoor advertising. And so I would like to know, I guess, twofold, what we sort of expect the service usage to be of an average bicycle. As just, I understand that it's a guesstimate until you actually have them in service for a season. And then the other question would be, how are we intending to manage the outdoor advertising piece, which I guess has been a critical component of the Vancouver model? And I'm just wondering, is that advertising just going to offset the operators' costs? Is that something that the municipalities have the ability to control? I know there's a number of instances in TransLink's case where people have come forward with advertising that TransLink has rejected. So do we retain the ability to manage advertising on the charging stations or the bikes? Just curious if you thought about that, Zach.
Through your worship, we've done some thinking. The parameters, the guidelines don't require a dock or advertising. We would consider a proposal if it comes to us with an advertising component. But at the end of the day, we would have to assess that against our existing advertising requirements. So I would have to consult with purchasing really and the contracts they have signed for the bus shelters and the bike racks to see if there's conflict or if there are issues with that sort of arrangement.
Your worship, I'll just assure you right now, we are not going to commit to advertising that would not meet with council's requirements. So that will not be something that's going to happen at a staff level. If we're getting into advertising, significant advertising in the dock stations, we'll come back to council.
Just eyes open. Just you know, I'm not saying I'm entirely opposed to an advertising component if it makes it more cost effective for community to use it. I just recognize that the docking stations may not otherwise be available for advertising, therefore it's something we should be talking about. And to the other question, the question about the guesstimate on in-service hours during a pilot project?
For your worship, typically e-bike share systems have a higher usage rate than pedal bikes, something like 4 or 5 trips per day of 15 to a half hour. So that's where we would be hoping to see e-bike share use at some point in the pilot. In terms of how many hours that translates into, I would have to do some napkin math.
By the time we get a proposal, that would be appreciated, because I think it's an important benchmark. I guess my last question, I know I've had a lot of last questions tonight, but when I do drive through the city of Vancouver and see their charging docking station, there's some bikes have helmets and some do not. What are you proposing for the North Shore?
So as part, through your worship, as part of the requirements, the operator has to provide information and inform their customers about BC's helmet laws, which are that a helmet is required when you ride a bicycle anywhere or an e-bike. But we're not requiring the operator to provide physical helmets as part of the package. It can be cost prohibitive. And so we're asking the operator to tell us what they'll do and to have the ability to have some sort of enforcement that can look like the person signing off and say, yes, I have a helmet, and they have some liability if they don't, or taking a photo of the helmet. There are different ways the operators can use, but we're expecting the operator to tell us what their sort of accountability mechanism is going to be for the helmets.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Forbes, you spoken a second time, just a quick clarifying question. You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I just wanted to know if there's a timeline on this.
Yes, Your Worship. So the application process has started at the city. It opened on January 20th and will close on February 17th. We expect evaluations to happen sometime after that, and we're hoping that a permit could be issued in March, which would allow launch in the early summer.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Council. I'm going to call question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you for your presentation.
Good job, Zach.
Zach.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along to item 8.3. This is bylaws 8486, 8487, and 8488, OCP amendment, rezoning and development cost charges waiver bylaws for supportive housing development at West 16th Street. And I don't see Ms. Peters here. I see Mr. Milburn. Mr. Milburn, opening comments?
Your Worship, did we have someone sign up from Rain City, Amelia Ridgway, to speak to the item?
Not on my list.
All right, well, we'll make sure, if that's council's wish, we'll make sure to provide some time for her to speak. I know we do have a brief presentation from Ms. Peters, the Senior Development Planner, on this file, and after which we would be happy to answer questions of council. Thank you.
I think it'd be fine to go to the applicant partner at that point. So, sorry, Mr. Milburn, Ms. Peters is going to handle it? Okay.
That's correct, Your Worship.
Welcome.
Okay, good evening, Your Worship, and members of council and members of the public. My name is Casey Peters. I'm Senior Development Planner with the District of North Vancouver. And this presentation will provide a brief overview of the proposal at West 16th Street and Lloyd Avenue. Implementation of the project requires council's consideration of bylaws, including an OCP amendment, rezoning, and DCC waiver bylaw. This is a district-led rezoning application for supportive housing project for women and women-led families in need, at risk of homelessness, or experiencing homelessness. These are self-contained dwelling units to help achieve and maintain housing stability. Staff are proposed to be on site 24/7 to support residents, and supports may include access to family support workers, life skills training, employment assistance, connection and referral to community services and support groups, and connections to health resources, including services such as mental health or substance use services, all depending on the unique needs of each resident. And apologies for the lights. The district has partnered with BC Housing and with Rain City Housing on this project. BC Housing will be providing the capital and operating costs, and Rain City Housing will be the operator should the rezoning proceed. And both Rain City and BC Housing representatives are available this evening to respond to questions about the project.
Thank you.
I have a bit more.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. In terms of site details, site is approximately 3,200 square meters in size, located south of Marine Drive and east of Pemberton as outlined on the map in red. Surrounding land uses include industrial uses to the east, west, and south, mixed use residential commercial to the north, east, and northwest, and commercial to the north. Site and unopened road allowance to the north of the site is currently used for storage of vehicles for nearby car dealerships. Site is designated in the OCP as light industrial commercial, and bylaw 8486 proposes to amend the OCP to commercial mixed use level 1, which is the same designation found on Pemberton and Marine Drive. Zoning for the site is currently employment zone light industrial and is proposed to be changed to a new comprehensive development zone CD 133 to accommodate the development. Proposed density as a floor space ratio is 1.52, and the CD 133 zone permits up to a 1.6 FSR, which is lower than the 1.75 permitted under the C9 zone. Site is also located in development permit areas for forming character, energy and water conservation, greenhouse gas emission reduction, and for protection from natural hazards for creek hazard. To the site layout, the proposal includes 60 supportive housing units in a 5-story building. The main entrance is located off of Lloyd Avenue, and access to the underground parkade is from the southwest corner of the site off the lane. The proposal includes 1 level underground parking with a total of 26 parking spaces for staff and visitors. A multi-use path is proposed on the unopened West 16th Road allowance to provide a connection to West 16th Street to the west. The primary outdoor amenity area is located on the north side of the site, and a secondary outdoor amenity space is located on the south side. There is also a rooftop amenity space proposed circled in red and is proposed to include picnic tables and garden beds. And the amenity on the north side of the building is circled in yellow and includes a children's play area. Rents in the building are proposed to be a mix of shelter rate and rent geared to income. And the building is proposed to meet step code level 4. Further details on this can be provided at a later stage. So implementation of the project requires Council's consideration of bylaw 8486 to amend the OCP designation, 8487 to rezone the properties, and bylaw 8488 to waive the DCCs for the project. And as this project is well aligned with the housing goals of the OCP, all 3 bylaws are recommended for introduction, and the OCP amendment and rezoning bylaws are recommended for referral to the required public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Amelia Ridgway from Rain City, do you have any comments?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for providing me with this opportunity to speak about the proposed supported housing development that BC Housing is partnering on with the district and Rain City Housing. The proposed development on Lloyd Avenue will have around 60 units of both studio apartments and 2, 3, and 4 bedroom apartments for women and women-led families that are currently homeless or at risk of homelessness on the North Shore. This is an exciting opportunity for women and their families to have safe, stable, and supported housing with on-site services available. Rain City will have staff on site 24/7 who will be able to provide supports to the women and families. Support services will include family support workers, cultural liaisons, life skills training, employment assistance, and connection and referral to community services and support groups. Rain City will also provide opportunity for increased food security through meal programs and other food resources. Residents will go through a rigorous application process that Rain City will do in conjunction with BC Housing Health Services. All applicants will be interviewed beforehand and will have a fulsome understanding of the expectations of living at this proposed site. One of the most important features to supported housing is the additional safety and security that having staff on site 24/7 provides for both the residents of the building and the community around the site as well. Having staff around means that we can respond to issues in the moment as they arise and address concerns both internal to the building and externally as well. All applicants to this project will be from the North Shore. At Rain City, we have a specific way that we approach housing families, what we call women-led tenancies. What this means is that men can live at the building with their partners, but the lease will always be in the woman's name. So if there's a breakdown in the relationship, the woman maintains their housing with her children. Overall, our approach to working with families is collaborative, family-centered, strength-based, and culturally responsive. Our work with families is informed by an understanding of the systemic factors impacting children's well-being, such as poverty and the legacy of colonialism. There are a lot of different terms that can get used to describe what supporting is, and sometimes one of those terms is low barrier. Because this will be a building that will house families, we would not classify this project as a low barrier program. We would use the term supportive housing because this is a more fulsome and accurate way to describe the support services that will be offered to the women and women-led families that will be living there. Sometimes the term low barrier gets mistaken for meaning there will be no rules or guidelines that people living there will need to follow. This is not the case and would not be so in this building. Each person will be required to sign a program agreement outlining certain commitments that they will need to meet in order to live in this building. They will also sign a good neighbor agreement that speaks not only to how they will interact with other women and children living in the building, but also with the neighbors in the surrounding area. Part of supportive housing is recognizing that people will sometimes choose to use substances, as many of us across society do in our own homes. We want to make sure that if they're making that choice, then we can find ways and make time to talk about it, offer harm reduction services as needed, and provide additional supports when necessary. Many families that will be living here will be looking to make healthy choices in order to provide the safest environment possible for their children. We will be looking to work closely with other health services in the community to provide support and referrals as needed. Rain City Housing is committed to making this proposed development a positive member of the North Shore community, and we are committed to being a good neighbor. This building will be purpose-built, and security measures will include extensive camera monitoring, well-lit outdoor areas, including fencing and a controlled single point of entry. A community advisory committee would be created just prior to the building becoming operational and is an opportunity for the neighborhood and community to participate in this building becoming a successful member of the district. We take the job of housing vulnerable women and families seriously. We know that this project has a real opportunity to make difference in people's lives. If approved, we look forward to this project becoming a contributing member of the North Shore community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Naomi Brunemeyer, any further comments to add from BC Housing? Okay.
I just wanted to say that it's such a pleasure, Mayor and Council, to partner with you on this project. It's such a unique model to support women and children through supported housing, and that we're very proud to have Rain City as our operator. We know that they have experience with this population. It's modeled after a building that we have in partnership with them in the downtown east side with the Budsy building. So we're doing some trailblazing by including a relationship and referral from the nations on the North Shore through the Squamish and the Tsleil-Waututh. So certainly prioritizing Indigenous families that are members of the North Shore community. And so that's a really exciting process, but we know that this type of housing works. We've seen success coming out of it with 147 units in the downtown east side. And so we have a lot of confidence in this model and a lot of confidence in our operator, and we're very excited about the partnership with the site being offered by the district. And I'm here to answer any questions from BC Housing's perspective on the funding and the operating.
Thank you very much. I'll be moving the recommendation. Councillor Hanson, will you be seconding the recommendation?
I will. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. This council has worked very hard when using district land to find deeply affordable housing in our community and supportive housing in our community, and this is no exception. I think that this potentially fills a very critical gap in our community social services. It still has to fit, and we're still going to be working with the community as we go through the public process, but I look forward to hearing more from the community about this. So I'll be moving that this go forward to public hearing. Councillor Hanson.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I agree with all of that you've stated. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to second the staff recommendation at this time. I note that this is a partnership between the district, the province, and Rain City Housing, and I thank all of the partners and participants in this initiative. This initiative, if approved and if it proceeds, will allow 60 women and women-led families to reside on what is now 9 lots occupied for car storage. It will provide accommodation with rent at shelter rates or rents geared to income. As Worship stated, this addresses a very significant and broad social need in our community. And I believe, although we'll hear more in the public hearing, which is about to come, that there is very significant and broad-based community support for this category of initiative at this time in our community. I'm very happy to vote in favor of this matter proceeding to public hearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. I see no further speakers. Councillor Back.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I will just say that I agree with all of the comments made so far, and I just want to acknowledge how much work has gone in by staff and by BC Housing and Rain City as the potential operator here to get us to this point. This has been a long time coming, and I just want to thank everybody for their work so far. I think this is something that as a community we could be very proud of. And I think, you know, as Ms. Brunmeier has stated, this model has proven to be effective. And I think that the time has come for this type of development in our community. I think this project could be absolutely life-changing for the women and the families who are facing homelessness, substantially improving the quality of their life and improving the lives of those children. So I'm just really excited to see this move forward, hopefully with council support here tonight to a public hearing so that we can hear from the community. But thanks very much for all the work so far.
Thank you very much, Councillor Back. Councillor Curran.
Thank you. I won't repeat what's been said. I'm grateful to see this proceeding as well. Look forward to hearing from the community. I have personally heard a lot of support in the community for this. I think there's recognition, especially with COVID, that women in particular have been disproportionately impacted. And as you've mentioned, due to colonization and colonialism, the impacts are obviously historical and ongoing. So I really appreciate that partnership as well. And I did previously talk to someone about ensuring that it was LGBTQIA two-spirit friendly, and it is. I got the thumbs up on that. I think that's really important. And then obviously just the intersection of people with disabilities and everything. And it sounds like that's also being prioritized in this. So looking forward to hearing from the community, but again, I think there is support for this, and I look forward to seeing it proceed. So thanks everyone for getting it to this point.
Thank you very much. Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would just like to say I'm thrilled to be on council when something like this has come up. I think it's desperately needed, and it will be well used. And I just also want to thank Rain City, who we haven't done a project with before. So I'm looking forward, I want to thank them for coming forward on this project with us, and BC Housing as well. So I'm interested in it going to public hearing as well, but I think this is something that is badly needed in our district, and I look forward to what gets presented at the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bond.
Thank you, Mayor Little. I won't spend too much time echoing the many great comments from my colleagues here, but this type of housing is desperately needed in our community. And like Councillor Back said, it's going to be life-changing for the 60 women and women-led families that live here, should this be approved after the public hearing process. It has been a very long process. This originated with the previous council, and now we're having an opportunity to move it forward here. So I'm very pleased to see that, and looking forward to hearing support at the public hearing.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bond. Council, I see no further speakers on the matter, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you very much to staff and the applicants. We look forward to the public hearing on this matter. Did I miss a speaker from council on that one? Nope. Saw a couple hands pop up and drop down. Okay, next up, council, we have item 8.4, which is the 2021 budget introduction and draft financial plan workbook. And I know we have representatives from finance here. I see Mr. Wardell, I see Mr. Daniluk. Mr. Wardell and Mr. Stewart has popped up as well. So Mr. Stewart, do you have any opening comments?
No, Your Worship. We have a tradition of just introducing the budget to give council an opportunity to really take a look at it and provide us with background and input in terms of changes or that they would like to make. So this evening is just about producing the budget, giving the community and council an opportunity to comment on it, and then we'll get into discussion in about 2 weeks.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Stewart. I've got Mr. Wardell.
Yes, through your worship, the 2021 to 2025 financial plan we are introducing tonight continues a foundation that enables the community to move towards achieving its long-term vision. Staff believe that cost management and our long-term tax strategy that was started in 2004, which we're familiar with, which is the 3% tax increase, which is 2% for inflation and 1% for asset management, creates stability to move the community forward. Under provincial legislation, as you know, we are very restricted in how we can support our local business community, and those limitations continue during the pandemic. We have reached out to the province seeking any means to support a business, but the province has messaged us that between the Government of Canada and the province of BC's fiscal relief strategies and their grant programs, the necessary supports, in their opinion, are in place. That said, staff will be bringing some strategies back to Council in the tax distribution workshop for your consideration, which targets relief for business that complies with our legislative mandate and would at that time require an amendment to this draft financial plan, which currently excludes those considerations. This budget does respond to the pandemic impacts on our services and revenue losses. In 2020, we did, through our cost management efforts, the majority of the financial impacts that we experienced were mitigated. And those efforts, combined with a $6.4 million grant from the province, which is in this budget, lays a strong foundation for the balance of 2020 and 2021 with regard to the pandemic. As Mr. Stewart alluded to, the public input will be received over the next 2 weeks, ending February 22nd, at which time staff will collate questions from the public into a single document along with staff responses for Council's consideration. Following open remarks on February 22nd, Council will have an additional week to reflect on the plan, the public's questions, ask questions of us, and then deliberate this on March 1st. And those are my introductory comments, Your Worship. And it's over to Rick for a small presentation.
Mr. Daniluk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just loading up the presentation. Can everyone see the presentation?
Yes.
Thanks. After a series of meetings and workshops starting last October, tonight we introduced the draft 5-year financial plan. The purpose of this meeting is for Council and the public to receive this information as we start the next stage of the process. The financial plan workbook is now available on the district's website for members of the public who are following along tonight. The plan will be open for public input until February 22nd. As Andy mentioned, the input will be summarized prior to Council's deliberations meeting, which is scheduled for March 1st. Before we get into the presentation, I'd like to take a brief moment to thank the staff that helped prepare the information behind this workbook. This year has been challenging for everyone, of course, and a number of staff contributed to bringing the plan together, in particular community planning, engineering, communications, and of course, the financial planning and finance staff played key roles. The support of our leadership team provided the flexibility we needed to bring the information together, and I thank them for that. I'd also like to single out Shirley Young, our section manager of financial planning, who led much of the process, pulling the information behind the scenes during challenging times. This is her first run through the process leading those parts of it, and I'm very grateful for her hard work pulling it all together. At the heart of this plan is the district's continued response to the pandemic and ongoing council priorities. Directions received from council over the past year are reflected in the plan, including maintaining the district's current approach to property taxes, which has been effective and continues to compare well in the region. The presentation will cover the following items and will take approximately 10 minutes. We'll start with the timeline and for the process and share how priorities are shaped within the plan. As I mentioned, the process started way back in the fall of last year, and the latest workshop in January provided an overview of the long-term financial plan, which identified a fiscal imbalance over the next 10 years, along with emerging financial strategies to resolve it. Tonight, we're introducing the 5-year financial plan, which is scheduled for adoption in late March. Public input is received until February 22nd and will be summarized for council for their deliberations meeting at the beginning of March. After adoption, after bylaw adoption, council will consider the distribution of taxes amongst the property classes at the tax distribution workshop. Our corporate planning framework shown here starts with council's directions. It also includes ongoing services and long-term plans and strategies. As plans are approved, they're incorporated into the corporate plan and then the financial plan. The latest plan to be integrated is the Child Care Action Plan. While the stable and competitive approach to property taxes continues to be effective in the near term, we will need to explore emerging financial strategies to address fiscal imbalances in the outer years of this plan. In 2020, the district responded to the financial impacts caused by the pandemic. After investments in safety to protect public health and our employees, most services are now open or partially open, and costs are being managed to offset revenue losses. As the pandemic has disrupted the local economy, some businesses are struggling. Senior governments are the first line of support for business, as provincial legislation limits the ways municipalities can respond. This plan does include provisions to develop options on how to best support the local economy within those restrictions. Options will be presented at Council's tax distribution workshop in April following adoption of this plan. In late 2020, the district received a $6.4 million COVID grant from the province. There was a lot of coordinated efforts in the region and in BC amongst the municipalities to influence the province in providing some support. So we did receive this grant late in the year. It was distributed throughout the province and assists municipalities in moving forward through the uncertainties and challenges caused by the pandemic. Guidelines on how to best use these funds were provided by the province, and the general expectations are the funds will be used to offset cost increases and revenue losses over a 3-year period. Municipalities may not use the funds for assistance to business, lowering property taxes, or most capital expenditures. Some provisions for use of the grant are included in this plan, and an update on the use of funds will be included in a financial plan amendment in the spring. We're estimating approximately half of the provincial grant will be applied to 2020 and the remainder through 2021 and 2022. This financial plan contains a proposed 3% property tax increase for this year. The increase on the average residential home is $71. This increase includes $47 for municipal operations and an additional $24 to sustain our asset and infrastructure. Our assets and infrastructure are under new pressures with rising costs and adapting for climate change. The proposed 3% tax increase incorporated the following items. Some costs rose ahead of inflation, including protective services and insurance. Staff made adjustments for these unavoidable increases to contain the tax increase to 3%. The COVID grant will offset incremental costs and revenue losses related to the pandemic, and council directions are included through the realignment of resources and the leveraging of tax growth revenue where appropriate. The highlights included in the 5-year financial plan are shown on pages 4 and 5 of the workbook under prioritizing investments in the community. In those pages, you'll see mobility investments include over $30 million in active transportation projects as we begin to connect the centers, regional parks, and neighboring municipalities. Affordable housing includes a number of planned active or planned projects, followed by a provision in the outer years of the plan. And the project that was just discussed earlier this evening is included in the plan. A new staff position to advance housing objectives is included, as recommended by the Rental and Social Housing Task Force. Childcare facilities are included in the new Lynn Creek Community Center, and provisions for additional childcare spaces are included in the outer years of the plan. As mentioned, provisions are included to support the local economy within legislative restrictions, and new departments supporting the community energy and emissions plan, climate adaptation strategy, and related environmental and sustainability initiatives is also included. And finally, a number of ongoing projects supporting community safety, health, and resiliency are included as part of our rolling 5-year plan, along with investments in organizational resiliency to support the implementation of the plan and the projects in it. The 5-year capital plan is summarized here. This plan includes many of the investments that were just highlighted. Approximately half the plan goes to maintain the district's existing assets in a state of good repair, while the other half goes towards priorities, including new capital and initiatives. At $471 million, the plan is ambitious, and staff will be pursuing strategies to keep the projects moving forward. On page 11 of the workbook, there's a discussion on the use of reserves. The reserves were restructured last year to align with council directions and the long-term plans. This table summarizes the main themes for the reserves and the projecting ending balances by 2025. The table shows available funds at $431 million in the left, and use of funds at $395 million over the 5-year period. It illustrates funding gaps in 2 key areas, one being existing capital, not related to our utilities, and lands and housing. Staff suggests these imbalances can be resolved through the emerging financial strategies identified at the long-term financial plan workshop on January 25th. The key emerging strategies include use of district lands for housing and employment, consolidating end-of-life facilities into community hubs, and selective use of debt financing. All of the financial strategies are included on page 15 and 16 of the workbook. Looking past the 5-year plan and the financial plan bylaws, staff will begin addressing the funding gaps in the outer years of the plan over a series of workshops this year. Staff will integrate council's directions from these workshops and will develop options to bring the plans into balance. Options will be brought back to council for discussion prior to the end of the year. The plan is compact compared to other municipalities, but I think it's organized well. We can work on some of the visual presentation to make it a little easier for the public to understand. There is a lot of information there. We are available to answer any questions during the process, and we'll be attending a community associations meeting on February 17th to walk through the details of the plan and answer any questions. Public input will be received up until February 22nd. That input will be summarized for you and provided prior to the council deliberations meeting scheduled for March 1st. Adoption of the plan is scheduled for early April, and additional supports for business will be considered at the tax distribution workshop later that same month. That concludes my presentation. I look forward to answering any questions you may have during the upcoming process.
Thank you, Mr. Danyluk. First speaker I have is Councillor Forbes. Will you be making a recommendation? The goal is just to move receipt of the presentation.
Yes, I'll move.
Councillor Bond, will you second receipt? Thank you. Councillor Forbes, first comments?
Yeah, I'm concerned about a couple things. Well, more than a couple, I guess, but actually this report was not published for the public until at least at 5 o'clock, by 5 o'clock this afternoon. It wasn't published. So somewhere in between 5 and I guess 7 when the meeting started, it got published to the public. So I don't know how we, in fact, really expect much input when the
You
public
really
didn't.
don't. It's just introductory, and this is the start of the process. The tradition has been that at first it's just included included on table, and then we go forward seeking public input at future points.
And maybe that should be noted in the agenda when it's posted, because I've had several people call me and say they can't find the information. So maybe we should be a little more clear in the agenda so that people are aware of that. Council, as a counselor, I didn't receive it until a few hours before this meeting, and I haven't had time to go through it to have input on it myself tonight. I would like to thank the staff for all the work that's gone on. Doing budgets is not an easy, simple, or fast task to take on. I'm also wondering then, because on our agenda with this item, it says materials will be circulated. Does that mean that there will be a publication that can be a hard copy that can be picked up by the public, or will it only be on the website?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Stewart.
I have a couple of other questions, but if I
I'll
could
come back to you. I'll come back to you, Councillor Forbes. Mr. Stewart.
Your worship, simply, this is not intended to be fait accompli. This is intended to be an introduction of the budget, and what we wanted to do, and what we've always done, is given council an opportunity to review it and the public for a number of weeks before we begin the public consultation process. So that's all I have.
Mr. Stewart, back to you, Councillor. Oh, Mr. Daniluk, you had another comment?
Yes, through your worship, to Councillor Forbes. The hard copy of the booklet will also be available at the 3 libraries tomorrow, and we'll be making additional copies available and bringing them to the community associations meeting. Council copies were made available today. And
okay, thank you, Councillor Forbes.
Thank you. Maybe we should clarify that on our agenda as well, because it says that there will be booklets available to anybody to circulate. So we should be a little more clarified on that. A couple of other things was, if I understand correctly, the public input or the chance for a possible dialogue between the council and the public is going to be, let me reword that. There won't be any dialogue between the public and council, but there will be dialogue within the next 2 weeks with finance. I'm assuming that's probably you, Rick, because you usually do the community association one. And then the highlights or the points that get raised to anyone in the next 2 weeks then gets presented to council, but there's no interaction between the public and council. Is that correct?
there will be public input at the council meeting on February 22nd. And then, of course, prior to then and from now forward, we'll be receiving the input from the public and summarizing it for you. So you'll have that information going into deliberations on March 1st.
Great, thank you. Just two other things that I just wanted to mention was, is it possible to get a copy of your presentation that you've done tonight?
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll be making that available on the web as well.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm assuming it'll be attached to the where we get the agendas and minutes. Is that where it will be?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And just one last thing. Like I say, I haven't had a chance myself to go over this, so I really don't have a whole bunch of questions at this point. But one question I just wanted to ask was that the property tax increase, because this came up last 2 years, I guess, the property tax increase of 3%, which is averaging $71 per household, that is just the district's tax portion. It doesn't include the flow-through taxation like Metro and TransLink. Is that correct? I just want to make that clear to the public out there.
Yes, you're correct that it's the municipal portion that we're speaking to, not the other jurisdictions.
So in fact, the actual increase that people may see when they get their tax notice is going to include Metro and TransLink taxes, which we have no control over, and in fact will be added on top of the $71, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. That's all.
Councillor Forbes, Councillor Bond.
Thank you, Mayor Little, and thanks to our finance team. I think one of the things that I've always appreciated in my 6 years on council is how easy our finance team makes our budgeting process. One of the things that is great about our process is that it's not just a one-time thing, it's a year-long process. We have workshops throughout the year talking about the budget process, and all of our plans get incorporated into the budget process. And I have the utmost confidence in our staff behind the scenes that are taking all the expressed needs and the wants of council through our different motions and the different plans that we approve, that are looking at all of our existing assets and understanding in great detail what's going to be required to maintain them in good and fair condition over their expected life, planning for the new assets with all of our departments. So I have an immense amount of respect and admiration for our finance team, and I think they're probably one of the best. So I just wanted to let everyone know that. The one question I do have going into this year, and it's, I guess, a perpetual question, Councillor Forbes hit on it a little bit, is the public input portion. And I remember the past few years, there's been basically comments from one or two individuals on the budget process, and usually the people that follow the council and follow the budget most frequently. So I'm wondering if staff have put any thought to how we might get more engagement. Obviously, a detailed workbook and capital plans and operational plans is not necessarily the most engaging format to get people's direct input, but maybe if staff can talk a little bit about how we get input into the budget process, and I would appreciate that, because it doesn't necessarily look great when there's only two people commenting on the budget. Maybe that's incorporated into the input into all the other plans that we're doing throughout the year, but I would like to see if there's a way that we can increase the visibility of our budget.
So through your worship, there was always ways to increase that input. To your point, Councillor Bond, the input in very many ways is received and directed to us through the other mechanisms. The budget, for example, affordable housing, transportation, etc. The budget simply pulls those directions together and conveys them in a scenario based upon the desires of the community, council's directions, and, as Mr. Danox articulated, the corporate plan. Those are the key drivers. In the past, what we have done is we've had charrettes and other group initiatives where we've brought 30 or 40 or 60 members of the public and the business community in and presented to them in detail aspects around our asset management, development processes, debt financing, how taxes work. We've done those in the past, and there's nothing stopping us from reaching out and doing that again. Post-COVID.
If I might add just a follow-up comment, I think if we revisit, as Andy was saying, some of those charrettes and discussions that we had on long-term financial policy, those have been well attended in the past. As we look to the 10 years forward and the things that we're trying to achieve and articulate the big changes that we're after, I think we definitely would get more public engagement around that process. what we're looking at tonight is a 5-year view focused on the near term, and a lot of projects that they've seen already. It's a rolling plan. So I suggest we get more engagement with a longer term view and starting to illustrate how if we shift the finances, we can actually start to achieve some of those longer term goals.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that's a good summary, and I think Mr. Wardell, what you said about the input on each individual plan that we pass, and I think we have such a stable framework to finances and to the budget, and it seems that at least during my term on council and my time here, that staff have been able to incorporate the different plans and the different directions that have been provided by council into that framework. And I think that speaks a lot to both the strength of the district's finances and the capabilities of our staff and all of our team to pull together those diverse needs that come from the community and from council.
Councillor Bond. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Little. Thanks for the presentation. And this process is pretty typical from previous years. I know the Community Associations evening is generally quite successful in having members of the associations come out when they used to come to the hall and meet with Rick. But it will be interesting to see the uptake in regards to using this format during COVID, the kind of response that we get on our budget. Maybe there's some people that otherwise wouldn't have been able to have made previous meetings that may be able to come out and join us on Zoom. So maybe an opportunity for the community associations to maybe reach out to their membership and alert their membership that there is going to be a Zoom meeting on February 17th to go over the budget. That might be of interest to some members that can just tune in from the comfort of their home with their laptop and take part in the process there. So yeah, I mean, this is the introduction evening, so none of us, I don't think, I certainly haven't gone through the booklet yet. I just got it this afternoon, but thank you for the booklet. And I'll be most interested in looking at the money that the province has presented to the municipalities, their suggestions as to how we should use this money, and the debate that will ensue from that. So I look forward to the upcoming workshops and the discussion on our budget going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Curran.
Thank you, and apologies, my laptop died and I had disconnected during when Matthew was speaking. So if I'm repeating anything, it's because I didn't hear it. But I just want to thank staff. I'm really looking forward to taking a deeper dive into this. And I would like to hear a lot more from the community, because I think, as we brought up in the workshop, that it is a moral compass. It's like how we as a community, where we put our values and where we put our resources. And so I think that that is a really important discussion to have. There are some really cool, innovative tools online that I've seen other municipalities use that allow residents to actually go in and play CF No, as I like to call our CFO. And that's it's a good one. Mike liked that one. Yeah, CF No. And so it allows you to really say, like, what are the compromises, and what are we willing to compromise on, and what are we not willing to compromise on, and what does that look like? So it's cool to see some of those new apps that are allowing more people to engage with the budget in a more creative way. So I certainly support that. And I'm just really pleased, and I wanted to really give a shout out. I know asset management has always been a real strength of the district, and has been, we've been a leader in that regard. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing how we become the first municipality in the world that we're aware of to integrate natural asset budget, carbon budgets into financial planning. So it's a new way of looking at things for the 21st century. And I think we have some real strong leadership among staff, and I'm really looking forward to advancing that. I think we've really come a long way, and we have a a lot of work ahead, but it's going to be exciting to make better long-term decisions that do what the booklet says, which is our mission as an organization is to provide leadership and exemplary public service, fostering the economic, social, and environmental well-being of our community's needs for today and its aspirations for tomorrow. So that's in our, I think, on the second page, which is about as far as I got. So look forward to harassing our financial department over the next couple of weeks and hopefully hearing from more people in the community.
Thank you. Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just really want to emphasize what I said at the beginning, and I believe a couple of councillors have said also, that transparency and including the public is the most important thing that we can do as around budget time. It's taxpayers' money, and we need to make sure that we're relatively on the same page. And there's nothing like seeing a whole plan brought together for the first time like this draft, because as much as we may have passed the sewer rate or the water rates, or we may have passed things in individual workshops, most people, including myself, I have to see the whole picture all at once together and how it all flows through. That's what makes it easier for me to understand. So it's great that we do all those during the year, but there's nothing like getting the whole package together at one time. I would like to say that I would like only a 2-week window here for under the circumstances for public input. Then I would really like to find whether it's through charrettes or whether it's through other kind of software that we can, although it's short notice, but anything else that we can do to bring more of the public into the conversation, because nothing is status quo. And I feel myself that COVID-19 has changed a lot. And so there hasn't been a lot of, obviously, we've had to have virtual meetings. We need to involve the public more, and we need to make sure that they understand it. And I haven't looked through the workbook yet, but I hope that we have taken that into consideration where we landed because of COVID last year. And COVID may be with us for another 2 or 3, or maybe permanently, but on a lesser scale. So we don't know what the impact is going to be going forward. So I really truly hope, and I trust that staff has considered that and hasn't just simply continued plans that were made pre-COVID-19. So I would be in favor of somehow either, I don't know, extending or advertising out to the public somehow to be able to get more input in from the public. That would be my hope. And I also hope this year that the public, when they do their final recommendations to council, will be able to finish their reports this year so that they can feel satisfied. I don't think a couple of people were truly satisfied last year. But again, I thank everybody who's involved in doing this. I've done budgets lots of times, and they're not easy and they're not fast. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes. And again, just as an encouragement to anybody out there, if you have questions or concerns about the budget, reach out early. One of the challenges we have in the last few years that we've gone through the budgeting process is people wait until the last meeting in the process in order to be able to share their concerns, and it becomes more difficult as we go through this process to make changes. It'd be better to get your feedback earlier, wherever reasonably practical. And people can always provide written feedback through input@dnv.org, in addition to the public opportunities that we create through the process. But I agree, we have to make sure that the public is very well aware of those opportunities. Councillor Back.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I will echo a few of the things that have been said, but I did just kind of want to listen to what the thoughts were around the table. But Like Councillor Bond has said, I just want to say that I also appreciate the unpredictable nature, or how predictable I should say, that this is coming forward every year. We do rely on staff, and our finance team do an excellent job every year bringing this forward in the way that you do. So thank you very much. And maybe that's one of the reasons why we don't always hear from a lot of the public, in that, you know, people do trust that things are in order here at the district. And I think if they weren't, we would hear otherwise. So it's always great to try and have more of the community engaged, and I think we can always strive for that. And certainly, as Councillor Forbes has said, with COVID, everything has changed, and so, you know, we can look at some different ways of trying to involve the community. But I think the information is there, and people can always be involved in the process if they want to. But again, just thank you to staff for all your work and ongoing work in these plans. It's appreciated, and I look forward to reading through the workbook in greater detail.
Thank you, Councillor Back. Mr. Daniluk, any wrap-up comments?
No, Your Worship. Looking forward to supporting council and the public through the process, and offering some prompt responses to any questions you might have.
Okay. Thank you so much. Mr. Stewart?
No, Your Worship, this is the start of a process, and council and the community has lots of opportunities to provide input.
Thank you. Okay, so I believe it was moved and seconded, Councillors Forbes and Back, I think. Councillor Forbes and Bond. Okay, and so I'll call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. It is received, and I look forward to future engagement on the budget over the next few weeks. Okay, thank you very much. That's the end of reports from council or staff. Council, we still have some time today for some individual reports, if there are any. Councillor Back, your hand is up. Is that from the previous item, or do you have a report?
No, it's for this item, Your Worship. Just a very brief update, and that is that I had my first meeting with the Museum and Archives Commission, and it was just my first meeting, but it was a great introduction to the organization, and it's an incredibly exciting time, of course, to be involved as they prepare for the opening of the new Manova, the new museum down in the city of North Vancouver. I actually had a tour in the fall, but I've got another tour later this week to see some of the progress that's happening there. But I was really just impressed on a number of fronts. The fundraising that continues to come along, even during the pandemic, there's been a lot of progress made. And I was particularly impressed with a lot of the work around equity, diversity and inclusion that's been done and continues to happen with the museum and archives staff. They have an Indigenous Voices Committee as well, which I learned about and was quite impressed by. So I think as we embark on our work in that area, we can certainly look to that organization. But yeah, lots of great stuff happening there, and I'm looking forward to the build up to the new opening. That at this point we're saying June, but of course with COVID things have been delayed, and I guess the timing isn't quite as essential when people aren't gathering the same way and we're not seeing tourists in the same way. But nonetheless, it's going to be really exciting when we see that new facility open.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Back. Next up, I have Councillor Hanson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm reporting on the meeting of the Indigenous Relations Committee of Metro Vancouver, which was conducted on February the 4th, 2021. Much was discussed regarding reconciliation and UNDRIP, and how the goals of UNDRIP can be integrated into local government, and how the affairs of Metro Vancouver can be coordinated in order to ensure the goals of reconciliation. A couple of issues that were of specific relevance perhaps to the district and that council may wish to consider. First was with respect to Metro Vancouver's governance structure. There is at the moment no formal mechanism for non-treaty nations, and there are of course 2 non-treaty nations within the district. No formal structure for these entities to have any official say with respect or input with respect to the affairs of Metro. And that's an issue that's being addressed And at an appropriate point in time, we're going to have to weigh in with perhaps some commentary on what we think would be an appropriate type of governance structure for non-treaty nations when it comes to input into Metro. There was also discussion of land acknowledgements. We're a council that doesn't begin our council meetings with land acknowledgements. For my part, I do think we probably should give consideration to commencing with a land acknowledgement. There was discussion about a vote that was held in Surrey recently where they voted down land acknowledgements in council meetings. So it's an issue that we're going to need to revisit, I believe, and an issue that the different local governments across Metro are going to have to address in terms of their reconciliation initiative. So that's our report from the Indigenous Relations Committee meeting.
Councillor Hanson, Councillor Kern.
Thank you. Jordan and I switched roles, so he's on the Rec and Culture Commission, and I'm on the Library Board. So I just wanted to report on what's that.
Jordan went to NVMA, and Councillor Forbes went to Rec, and you went to Library. So yes.
Just kidding. What you said.
Fantastic.
So just so we know, I'm in the right place. I'm on the Library Board now.
You are. That's the important part.
I'm not sure where everyone else is, but apparently. I just wanted to report on that. It was a great group of folks. We nominated a new board chair, and I just wanted to recognize all the work that they have been doing, both to adapt to COVID and in terms of working with Indigenous communities. And it's Black History Month, and so there's some displays that I have not yet seen, but they have been advertising or putting on their social media. Certainly at Parkgate, and I'm not sure at all the branches. I'm assuming it's all the branches, but lots of exciting work happening there, and I'm just excited to be part of that team.
I missed who the new chair is, Councillor Kern.
And I was also thinking that wouldn't that have been a good time to remember that name?
It's Lara Gregorek, I believe. I think
Lara's
because I saw that on social media.
Thank you so
You're
much,
welcome.
Jordan. Yes, thank you for
Lara's
that.
still
one. I was
transitioning.
like, wow, I'm a newbie. I'm going to get all the names. Next time I'm going to do all the names.
Laura is a long-term member of the Library Board. I'm going to guess probably going on 5 or 6 years.
Well, congratulations, Laura. And that's the end of my update.
Thank you very much. Actually, my recollection, she's 4 years, I think. That's how long she's been on there. But okay, I don't see others. Just for my own, a lot of my time this week has been spent doing meetings, departmental meetings with external agencies. So I had meetings with Recreation, with RCMP, with North Van Museum and Archives, North Shore Emergency Management Office. I figured I'd just mention, what meetings looked like under COVID is typically you pick up a coffee and you walk around the neighborhood and try to cover what you can, and or you sit and freeze outside at a coffee shop. That is what it is currently. I look forward to being able to have meetings back in the hall again. I've certainly had too much coffee this week. Also, we had a long, near full day workshop with TransLink this last week. This is looking at the 2050 plan, long-term priorities. Really a fascinating discussion and debate. I've never seen that group so animated as when we had to discuss the difference between extensive investment and intensive investment. This is where extensive is where you're trying to spread the transit services to underserved areas, and intensive is where you're trying to increase the resources going to the already most served areas so that you can have people entirely move into transit. And it was a very animated discussion. So it was a great workshop last week. Also participated in a Deep Cove Community Association discussion about parking and the Naughton connector and the potential impacts of a significant culvert being installed in Deep Cove. It will be very disruptive, and so we decided to have a discussion with the community association about those matters. And that is going to be a long ongoing discussion, but it's a very disruptive construction project. So we figured we'd meet with the CA. And I was happy to say that they had over 100 people attempt to participate. Unfortunately, there was a limit on the license on Zoom, and so not everybody was able to. So we're going to make other future opportunities available for discussion on it. And also met with some representatives of the 29th community to talk about the bike lane progress on that space as well. So been a busy week, getting back to lots of in-person meetings, but again, walk and talk format rather than sit down in a space. But I'm looking forward to getting the hall back open again at some point. That's it for my reports. Mr. Stewart, any updates or reports from the CAO? I think did we lose Mr. Stewart? Oh, there we go.
No, Your Worship, not at this point. We'll be distributing that through information reports. We'll be distributing through information reports to council. So, no.
Okay. Great.